From the National Weather Service in Raleigh, it's Nick Petro with a special weather briefing here for Central North Carolina on this Sunday, September 15th at 10, actually we're 11:30 in the morning, and this is in regards to tomorrow and Tuesday's potentially heavy rain event. Pretty interesting scenario going on here. Let's just jump right to the overview so you can see what is going on here with this quickly evolving scenario. So we have an area of low pressure that is sitting off of South Carolina, and you could see it down here east of Charleston, and it's forecast to strengthen and move northwest towards North Carolina and then eventually up into the mid-Atlantic region by Wednesday. So that's the scenario. And you're probably wondering, well, wait a minute, we're here near the peak of the hurricane season. Is this not a hurricane or tropical storm of something of tropical nature? Well, the answer to that, real quickly, let me switch to, I know I'm kind of already veering off course here, but here's a quick satellite image here that I'm just looping it back and forth, and you can see the swirl, right? Here's the center of this low pressure system. But if we put on a different way of looking at the clouds, if we put on the water vapor, which shows us the higher winds aloft and the rising and sinking air, and then we put on here an analysis of the mid-level conditions, we could see a couple things I want to point out here. We could see there's an area of upper level low pressure and some upper level sort of disturbance action. There's a little bit of an upper reflection of both of these. But the bottom line is there's a tremendous amount of shear in where this arrow I'm drawing. So as you could see, that is one of the main reasons why, number one, this system is having trouble deepening and maybe perhaps even becoming something tropical oriented, because look at these winds from the west that are just pretty much just shearing the top half of this to the northeast and north. And why is all this wind here? Well, it's because of this big low pressure system, and that upper low sort of extends all the way through here. So it's more driven in part by this upper level feature rather than, high pressure sitting over top of this aloft and it developing from the bottom up. So if the high pressure sitting up here, the upper level ridging is way up to our north. If this low pressure upper trough, and again, this is in the upper levels of the atmosphere, wasn't here, and you saw something like this sitting underneath or closer to an upper ridge, well then, maybe it would have the chance to build from the bottom up over the warm water and basically become of tropical nature. The other thing I want to point out is a lot of dry air. You see these yellows, all this is indicative of dry air, and that dry air is being pulled into the system as well. And that always, or tends to happen rather, as we get interaction with upper troughs and upper level features. So we're not at the point yet where, we want to call this a tropical system. Again, keeping in mind that it's driven in large part by this mid and upper features here, which makes it less of tropical nature. Okay, so let's go back to the slide here. And so we're just calling this a low pressure. And even though it's not tropical, low pressure can still strengthen, and it is forecast to strengthen offshore and move towards the Carolina coast here Monday morning before moving northwest. And clearly with a low pressure system and high pressure to the north, that'll create breezy northeast conditions. In fact, it's already breezy out there. I'm seeing gusts of 15 to 20, maybe 22, 23 miles per hour right now occurring across the region. So it'll be breezy at times, but the main concern with this, and this is why we're calling it a heavy rain event, because that's going to be the main hazard: heavy rain and flash flooding. Now, that risk will be possible as early Monday, but more likely late Monday into early Tuesday. And I'll show you in a minute why there's a lot of, I would say, uncertainty and low confidence, because look at that next bullet point there. This is a low confidence forecast. because there's several models that take the low pressure system in different directions. There's some that take it further west. And if that happens, then the bands of heavier rain could impact more of central North Carolina, maybe even the western Piedmont, as rainfall amounts could be higher what we're currently forecasting. So let me take you to a way to convey that. Bear with me here for just a second. And just to kind of show you why we're seeing some forecast challenges, I want to definitely bring you in on this. So this is basically 3 different models. We have got one model here on the far right, that's the American model. We've got one model in the middle, that's the European model. We've got the North American model on the far right, which is more of a high resolution. It better handles like cold air damming in the wintertime and more complex terrain type features. So it's not always the best model for tropical systems, but I'm going to show it anyway just for comparison and to show you how many differences that there are. So let's step through this, and this right now is the current location. This is how 3 different models are depicting the current location of the low, and the background image represents rainfall, where the rainfall forecast is expected. So as I move forward in time, and I'm going to have to unfortunately go back to my arrow, so bear with me here for just a second. Okay, as I go forward in time, this would be 8 p.m. this evening. And the one thing I want to immediately draw your attention is look how much faster and further north that the American GFS model is than the European. The European hardly moves the system in the next 6 hours. And the North American model's not really that much faster either. But then let's advance forward to tomorrow morning. This would be 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. And just look how the models diverge at this point. You've got the American model that brings this low on shore across northeast South Carolina. You've got the European that actually drifts it a little bit west-southwest and still has it mostly over water. And then you have the North American model, which takes it due north. And each one has a different placement for where its heaviest rain is occurring. If the GFS model is correct, then the heaviest rain is falling tomorrow morning across central North Carolina. If the European is right, the heavier rain is still along the coast or offshore. And if the North American model is right, the heaviest rain is sort of more towards the north of the low and even still offshore. So you see why this is such a challenging weather scenario. It's normally when you have a low this close to the coast and ready to make come ashore, usually by this time frame, there's a lot better agreement. Let's take you to midday Monday, and we'll see how the models diverge at this point. By midday, about this time tomorrow, the low, according to the GFS model, is over the northern, basically north central South Carolina, with bands of heavier rain falling across central North Carolina. The European model's just got a very kind of broad, baggy low with, again, the heaviest rain east of I-95. And the North American model is, again, taking it further north with, bands starting to move across the coastal plain region. As we go to tomorrow evening, this would be 8 p.m. Monday evening, and the GFS model is basically over Charlotte with, the rain kind of spreading out a little bit, where the European, look, it's still sitting here offshore the center with rain just ever so slowly moving across eastern North Carolina, and the North American model's kind of in the middle. So, and then finally, let's just jump right ahead to Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. And by Tuesday morning, 8 a.m., the GFS model is pretty much done and over with. Maybe just some leftover rain moving across eastern North Carolina, northeast North Carolina, while the European model's just sort of getting underway. And Tuesday morning, the European model would suggest that, all this heavier rain will just be sort of in the process of falling, maybe Monday night into Tuesday morning. Whereas the timing wise, the North American model sort of in the middle. It has the heaviest rain, suggesting that the heaviest rain would fall tomorrow night, basically. So, as you see, a lot of differences, and which one of these is going to be the solution makes our job a little challenging, actually a lot challenging. And by the way, let's just get through to Wednesday evening, and then by Wednesday evening, again, the GFS model, it's done and over with. The North American models is pretty much done by by Tuesday. This is Tuesday evening. I'm sorry if I misspoke earlier. This is Tuesday evening. And Tuesday evening, the European model just brings the low by then over basically the I-95 corridor. So with heavier rain is still underway at that time. So yeah, so if the GFS model is right, then we're going to start seeing heavy rain move in tonight, late tonight, and be done by early Tuesday morning. If the European model's right, then the heavier rain across central North Carolina won't come until late tomorrow night, and even through the day Tuesday. So anyway, there's some big differences there. In case you're wondering, well, how much rain does this really amount to? Let me take you to something else. Bear with me here for just a second while I get my graphics set up here. And let's see here. Looks like I'm not going to have that available. So anyway, let me just go back to my slides here, and let me just show you how much rain we are thinking. So right now, the best, sometimes when you have such a wide variety of solutions, oftentimes what we do is sort of take a consensus of all those solutions. And if you basically take all those solutions, put them in a big blender and look and see what pour out the end result, this is essentially what we get. We get anywhere from 1 to 2 inches across the western Piedmont to 2 to 3 inches of rain across the eastern Piedmont and I-95 corridor, with 3 as much as 6 inches eastern North Carolina, east of I-95. So the problem is, though, if those western more solutions end up being the case, the area that I have in the dashed line, the area inside that dashed line, the amounts could be higher, and there could be swaths. It may not be higher everywhere in that dashed line, but somewhere in that dashed line could see 3, 4, maybe even 5-inch rainfall amounts. If say the GFS if it leans more towards the GFS solution. So basically, right now we're going to call this a 1.5 to 3-inch rain event here for central North Carolina. Now, what will 1.5 to 3 inches of rain give us? Well, that's probably not enough rain to cause any major concerns regarding river flooding, okay? Because a lot of this, if this forecast holds, will be downstream of the dam, and then what falls upstream of the lakes rather could be caught there. But 1.5 to 3 inches of rain, maybe 4 inches in spots, can result in flash flooding if it comes down hard and steady and repetitive. So I think our biggest threat with this type of event is localized flash flooding. Okay, so with that said, we do have an excessive rainfall outlook that shows, in the ERO, as we like to call it, basically depicts what areas have the greatest risk for flash flooding. The higher the color, the greater the risk for flash flooding. So right now, we have the highest risk for flash flooding basically from Raleigh eastward, okay, I-95 eastward. You might want to call this the US 1 corridor eastward, because let me get my drawing tool out here. So where does US 1 run? This is all approximate, right? This is approximately the US 1 corridor, right? So basically along and east of US 1 is where we think the greatest risk for flash flooding will be. Why? Because the rain we expect to be heaviest there. But where there could be more isolated flash flooding as far west as the Triad, the eastern Charlotte suburbs, our friends in Anson County, Stanley County, could get in on some of that flash flooding. So, and again, when? Well, if the GFS is right, it could be early as tomorrow morning, Monday morning, but more likely late Monday into early Tuesday, okay? So as early as tomorrow morning, but more likely late tomorrow night, okay? And the usual places that flood, if it's flooded before, that's the areas that will have the greatest risk for flooding, urban areas, okay, poor drainage areas, the creeks that tend to be more flashy, okay. Now, I wanted to include an alternate scenario because of all the model differences. And I just showed you 3 models. We literally look at dozens and dozens of models, and there's all sorts of solutions in between. there's some models that show bands of 4, 5, 6 inch rainfall amounts falling across parts of our area. Okay, but there's something there's something for there's all sorts of options are on the table here. But the general alternate scenario here is that if the low tracks further west, then heavier rain could impact more of central North Carolina as well as the western Piedmont. So the highest risk for flash flooding could also shift further west than what's shown here. Okay, so one of the main takeaways is stay tuned, because there will be again, I showed this rainfall graphic, and there will be some differences between this forecast and what happens in reality. Okay, we're just not sure at this point what those differences will be. All right, let's just briefly talk about some wind gusts, because if you go outside, I'm looking out the window here and I see the trees blowing around pretty good. So we're already seeing a pretty decent, I mean, it was windy yesterday, well, breezy, I guess. Uh, you know, and that'll be the character, because anytime you put an area between high pressure to the north and low pressure to your south, it's windy. So we had pretty steady 15, 20 mile per hour winds yesterday. That'll continue today. That'll continue tomorrow. But as the low is lifting north and we get into some of those heavier rain bands, there could be a gust to 30, maybe 35 miles per hour. And when do we expect that? Probably late on Monday into Monday night is when we think the highest wind gusts will occur. So anyway, that's something to keep in mind. There could be some power outages. A stray tree or two, could fall. All right, so let's wrap this up here. Our confidence is pretty low, quite frankly, regarding the details and impacts. I mean, our confidence is at least moderate that the whole event will occur. That low pressure sitting out there, so eventually it's going to move north and perhaps northwest. But the real takeaway here is there's periods of heavy rain expected Monday through Tuesday. Heaviest rain, greatest risk for flash flooding. Right now, we expect across the coastal plain region, mainly along and east of I-95. Maybe I'll adjust that to say east of US 1. But that risk could shift westward if the low tracks further west. Right now, we don't think 2 to 4 inch rain event will cause river flooding, but we're closely monitoring those trends, because if we get any higher than that, then yeah, the risk for river flooding will go up. So we're keeping an eye on that. Right now, we don't think that's going to be a problem, but we're not letting that one go. We're going to keep an eye on that. And then of course, wind gusts of 20 to 30 miles per hour possible Monday through Tuesday. Maybe some isolated gusts to 35. Winds of this magnitude may blow around some loose outdoor objects, and all of central North Carolina will probably see these winds. So that's what I've got to offer here for this 11:30 briefing. The next briefing, I should say, not a live briefing, but more of a email PowerPoint briefing. That'll be updated. I'm going to send updated slides by 5 p.m. Our next webinar like this will be tomorrow morning at 11:30, because that's our regularly scheduled one that we do every Monday anyway. So we've already got that scheduled. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. But if there's any substantial changes or major updates, we'll definitely be pushing that out by email. So I know it's Sunday, and certainly a lot of folks got the day off, but definitely check your email throughout the day from time to time, see if we send anything. If anything becomes any clearer, then obviously we'll turn that around and get that out to you pretty quickly. But the next updated slide set, and I already sent the slides out that I just showed you, those have already been disseminated by email. But I'm going to update those and get those out by 5 p.m. It may be a little before 5 p.m. today. So anyway, that is our scenario that we've got coming up here next 48 hours. And that's your briefing here this Sunday morning on the 15th of September.